All right, thank you, everybody, for being here, and welcome to our November difficult discussion in diversity. This conversation is sponsored by the William Glasser Institute, or the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory, and US. And I'm Gloria Cisse. I am the chair of the Glasser Institute's Diversity Council. My co-chair is Akmos Neb Pethera, otherwise known as Elijah. I forgot Mickle, Elijah Mickle. I don't have it written down. And but we are, every time we do one of these conversations, I get really excited that the Glasser Institute is capturing this information, and that and sponsoring these conversations, because I don't know that every other organization is doing it, but I'm really excited that ours is doing it, and working towards continually having conversations and growing in our knowledge about different cultures, different people's lives, different aspects of our individual lives, and different aspects of religion, and so on and so forth. So I'm really proud to be a part of this organization and have an opportunity to take part in these conversations every month. This is a teaching opportunity, so there are people who may want to participate or hear these conversations who don't have a chance to join us on Saturdays at 2:00 Eastern time. So the conversations are recorded for the purpose of being able to share it with other people. And so just so everybody knows why we share it, and why we're recording it, and that we are recording it. This is a safe place. We this is a place where we believe that people can come here and express how they feel. Now, we won't allow anybody to say anything that's derogatory or hurtful towards others, but it is a place where we can come and talk about the things, those conversations that we might not be able to have somewhere else. But again, it has to be respectful of all differences, everybody's difference. We always have to be respectful of that. We have a couple of other guidelines, and that includes, we don't use any form of violence. We won't talk over each other. We won't use disparaging language. We will, in essence, just be respectful of each other. So with that being said, and Judith is like such a champion, always here. Nope, she's not on our diversity council. Neb, I think she needs to be like a co-chair.
And it's my birthday today, and being here is a gift I'm giving myself.
Happy birthday, Judith.
Happy birthday, Judith.
Last year I had the best birthday ever at the beach. This year they're bringing Reuben sandwiches over.
Oh,
so, yes.
Enjoy your birthday and your Reuben.
Oh, I am. Yeah.
So we're glad you decided to share a little part of your birthday with us.
You're a special group. I always learn something, and feel, even though I live closest to Marty, but we don't see each other in person very much at this point in time. But I get to show up and see him and Wendell and you, Gloria, and Doug and Jody, Neb and Lynetta. And I don't remember having spent time with Charlene before, but that's probably my memory. And so I feel like coming here, I learn things and I make friends. So, but it's a great way to spend a birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Lynetta.
We definitely enjoy having you here. We definitely do. So, as we usually do, what are you signaling me for, Wendell?
I was pointing to Doug.
I'm sorry?
I was pointing to Doug.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So what we usually do is we have someone bring us a topic, and then we have a conversation about the topic that they're bringing to us. And today, the topic is being brought to us by Doug. And as I stated earlier, the topic is, okay, I forgot. All right, so I'm going to let Doug tell everybody and go ahead. Hey, I'm a senior citizen. I have, what do they call those? Senior moments.
Yep, yep.
I own them. I live with them. I just keep it moving. Constructive resilience.
Yes. And
See,
if you
they
would,
say if you hold on, if you wait a second, it'll come back to you. So y'all, please, let's give Doug our undivided attention and hear what he is bringing to us on constructive resilience.
thank you so much. Would you enable screen sharing, please?
That means I have to make you co-host.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. That's the only way I know how to do it.
That's fine. So yeah, I was just wanted to, as Gloria mentioned, share a topic just for reflection and discussion. The topic is I titled it Social Justice and Constructive Resilience. I wanted to say before I start that I do share some particular examples, and they're not meant to push any kind of agenda or any one thing. It's just the lens from which I see the world, and so I'm kind of sharing it because that's the lens that I look through. So that's just wanted to say that at the start. So all right, got screen sharing, thank you. And we'll go ahead and start the presentation. Uh-oh. Just go desktop one. And okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I mentioned, it's social justice and constructive resilience. Now, social justice can be very, very broad. It can probably mean different things to different people. So I wanted to start out by defining what I mean by social justice, and what I'm defining as social justice is, it says like the set of conditions, and they could be things like laws. These could be things like social norms. It could be various things, but it's what allows individuals and groups to develop their, I lost the words. I didn't want to just read verbatim from the screen. So it's basically be the best that they can be individually or as groups. So they define it as the latent potentialities, and then those smaller, the individuals and the groups, they contribute to the flourishing of the whole body, and then that actually provides benefit right back to the individual. So it's this reciprocal reciprocal nature here, which we'll actually address here in the next slide. And this is titled The Relationship Between the Individual and Society. And there's a organic interdependence.
You can hear it okay? Okay.
So it talks about you have the individuals and groups. I guess I'll just kind of read it because I'm just kind of blanking here. I didn't think I'd be quite this nervous, but So it's an organic interdependence. The well-being of every individual and group depends on the well-being of the entire social body, even as the well-being of the entire body depends on the well-being of every individual group. So there's this idea that you have to work on the individual needs to improve, and doing that, then they help society to improve. And you have this sort of this two-way street between them. It's not just, you can't just focus on the individual and expect society to become better. And you can't just depend on, focus just entirely just on society and expect things to get better. I guess one thing I should have mentioned at the start of the beginning is that this, somebody just came in, okay. So,
I got it.
okay, thank you.
No problem.
So this is based on a longer article by Michael Carlberg, and it's titled "The Pursuit of Social Justice." And that there's the link if anybody would like to I can copy that into the chat if anybody would like to read it. It's a mildly long read, and that's why I decided just to kind of take some highlights out of it, and these were some of the highlights.
Can I just say
Sure.
something right here?
Sure.
That I think is really important about this entire quote that you have here. That I think the thing that stands out the most for me is that idea of interdependence, which, a lot of times we seem to have moved away from it, whether it was because of the way that this society is set up or whatever. We seem to be in a place erroneously that says that we are independent. And so this statement right here, it's because I say it all the time. I'm always, when I'm talking to the people that I work with, I am always talking about interdependence as opposed to independence, because we all do need each other. And the only way that any of us can be as successful as we need to be is that the society around us, our society, has become successful as well. So I really like this statement. And so can I ask you a question before you move on? I know.
Sure.
I'm trying to get you a little more comfortable here, but
Thank you.
but for you, when you, I know there was a reason that you chose this particular quote, and out of all that you said was a pretty long, it's a long read. Was there a particular reason that you chose this quote?
No, I think I think you hit the proverbial nail on the head. Is that idea of this organic interdependence, because it's not just something that you set down and say, okay, this is A, B, C, and D, or the UK, this is this way and this is that way, and they fit in these different proportions. It's organic. It's growing. So sometimes something, maybe like you focus, say, to make it relative to this quote, is you focus a little bit more on the individual at one time and for the particular conditions that you're in, and then maybe in a year or two or a few months, then you're actually going to maybe focus efforts more on sort of things that are focused more on the actual entire society, and so it's that organic nature of it, that it's it's also growing, and that we have to, and I think this next slide may speak to that too, is that it's growing. It may be like a small seed now, but hopefully as these ideas become more and more practiced by more and more people, we'll see these ideas grow as well, and spread throughout these concepts spread throughout the world.
Okay.
ideally.
Ideally. Okay. All right, good. Thank you.
And so then what kind of things, what kind of actions do we take to implement these things? And one of the things I thought was important from this article was the idea of that you have service oriented action, so that you're taking actions that will help to improve the life of humanity in general. You're not you're not necessarily, although you may and have to in practicality focus on one group, but that you're serving the greater society at large. And it also talks about that we need to cultivate both our mind and, you could say, spiritual or moral capacities. Those two things need to go hand in hand. You can't just cultivate just your science without your morals. You have to have both. And at the bottom of this quote, kind of reiterating that your individual and your society are again in this idea inseparably linked, and we get this idea of a twofold moral purpose, and that again a reciprocal relationship where the individual is striving to improve themselves. And how do they do that? They do things that are going to help to improve society. So for example, is you could I think there's lots of examples, but one, you could help serve at a soup kitchen. You could teach a Sunday school class or a children's class for virtues. You could help you could help youth to transition, negotiate that time between childhood and being a young adult. So there's lots of paths that you could take that help improve society as a whole.
And you're helping the individual at the same time, individual and society reciprocally.
Yes. And so that
Mhm.
then that finally, I guess, leads us into this idea of constructive resilience. And these were constructive resilience is defined as so you're neither succumbing in resignation or taking on the characteristics of an oppressor or the group that's in power.
Mhm.
So the idea is that the victim of oppression can transcend it through an inner strength that shields the soul from bitterness and hatred and sustains consistent principled action. But this strategy from the article, it kind of said you have to have a long game view, and that it can often take decades for you to see results, but those results tend to be a lot more longer lasting and deeper and more influential than perhaps some others. And again, this is just sharing these ideas for thought and reflection. So that's kind of how this idea of constructive resilience is defined. And here's just the example that's used, and that is the systematic and state-sponsored persecution of the Baha'is in Iran. Some people may have heard of this, where the Baha'is they're not allowed secondary or the college education. They're only allowed I'm not sure what level it would be equivalent of, but they're not allowed to have any kind of secondary education. Like their grave sites have been destroyed, houses, most recently, some of the homes have been destroyed. And I put an example in here just so that I guess to kind of give an example from the person. This individual is, as far as I know, is not it's not a Baha'i herself, but she was an Iranian American writer and commented that, and this is just reflecting on this idea that they're using this idea of constructive resilience, and that she said that someday others will look back at Iran and see that the most tragic was also the most uplifting story, that of Baha'is in Iran. So no other minority in Iran has been so systematically attacked for 43 years, yet no other advocates for forgiveness and tolerance more than they do. And I wanted to sort of share a personal, somewhat of a personal story, indirectly, I guess. As you can imagine, being a Baha'i myself, I would feel a lot of, even though you're not really supposed to, I would start to feel a lot of resentment for the government of Iran for treating the co-religionists that way. But one of the ladies, like some of her family members actually were there in Iran, and she shared that they don't view the government in that way. They're always trying to do what they can to help improve things there, and that really that kind of helped me a lot. Realizing that somebody from there had direct knowledge of the events there, was not getting kind of bitter like I was. So I just thought that was really powerful for me. Sort of another example that what happened is that the Baha'is at the time tried to create what they called the Baha'i Institute for Higher Education, which they basically created their own college. But you can imagine that that was also shut down later on, and that's no longer in existence. And that's all I have. I just wanted to open up the floor for to thoughts and discussion on these ideas.
Okay, so does anyone have any question? Thank you, Doug. This is really good, important information. Anybody have any questions or comments about social justice and constructive resilience?
Thank you, Doug. With the psychological reality that I can't hold on to two different ideas at the very same moment, I can shift back and forth. If I'm spending all my time resenting and others, then I don't have any psychic energy for trying to do something that I have control over. I think about John McCain was to see him in the Senate for years, operating very honorably, and then to forget that he was a POW for 7 years, and I think he was the ranking person and always kind of just took the lead in an honorable way for the other the POWs that were there. But I can't focus in any little positive way over here if I'm eaten up with resenting and trying to do something over there. So that your comments, Doug, were very helpful.
Thank you.
I like this conversation too. I really like the idea of us, and I think part of our the motivation for these conversations is this whole notion of social justice and how we can work to make things, change things in the society that we live in. And as I was reading those quotes and listening to you, Doug, I was thinking about how closely connected to what I believe to be some of the things that we do in choice theory are to what I heard you saying, like take, I always think of, not trying to control other people. But I also, it was something else I was thinking. I think Paulo Freire came up in as I was listening to you too. I don't know if anybody else has heard of Paulo Freire but me, but he wrote the book Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And he talked about, because for some reason my brain was like, okay, so the oppressed can behave a certain way, but they're working in an environment where the oppressors oftentimes think differently, right? And so, and I can't remember the quote from Freire exactly, but he talked about how frequently the thing that gets in the way of, and I'm not saying we don't keep doing what we do, is trying to build these bridges and make things, but he said that the problem is that the oppressor often believes that the oppressed, when they get get in a position of like having some power, will be the same way that they have been, right? So and then so I'm wondering how does that play a part in, I know it doesn't change what we do as humans, right? Those of us who believe in social justice, doesn't mean we stop. Or we don't continue to do the things we do. And I believe my work is all about trying to make our community better. But it does, how do you, can you fold that into, or anybody else, think about how can we make these things kind of join this idea of those who are oppressed, working towards or forgiving, and then the having oppressors who believe that if they give too much, then these oppressed will turn into them. I'm just, there's so many thoughts kind of going through my head, but I wish I had it, and I do own a copy of Freire's book, but I don't have it accessible, so I can't think about the quote right now, but I just wanted to put that out there. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody could follow all that rambling I just made, but I just did. But I was thinking as I was trying to talk it out.
Dr. Thise,
Yes.
I think if you're coming from a place of oppression or a place of less power than another person, even if you are coming from a place of less power, if you come to the table with equality in mind, I think that would ease some of the minds of the people who are in power or oppressing, as well as the people who are oppressed, if they come to the table with the mindset of equality.
Are you talking about all of the people, or are you talking about the people who are oppressed?
The people who are oppressed. So if the people who are oppressed are coming to the table with the mindset, I want equality, I don't want advantages, I think that the oppressors might feel less threatened than say if they come, I want what you had. If they come to the table saying, if the oppressors come to the people who are oppressed come to the table saying, I want what you have, that would feel more threatening. But if they come to the table saying, I want equality, I want everybody to have the same or the same share. I think if the oppressed people come to the table that way, I think the oppressors will feel less threatened. But that's just my thought.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew, back in the 1970s, mid 1970s, I was in Germany in the Air Force, and I was the first person to complete a 24-hour women's studies program because I was working in equal opportunity and race relations. And a quote that came from somebody, it's right on the money with what you said there and what Gloria is looking at. And the quote was, "A man of quality is never threatened by a woman of equality." I thought that was just marvelous, but there the person is saying, I'm coming with a notion of equality and not to take yours. And, but it was a challenge. It was a lot.
Go ahead, Judith.
Of course. Could I make it the whole hour and not comment? No,
No, we wouldn't want you to.
it would be a first. I agree with what's being said. The challenge I see is if I'm the oppressed and I come with a quality world picture of equality, good for me.
Mhm.
But the oppressor has to come to the table with at least the possibility of being open to something different. If
Mhm.
they continue to come to the table saying my way or the highway or whatever it is, it makes no difference what the oppressor comes with, at least to begin with. Now, maybe over time it can shift,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
but that would mean every time the oppressor came up with something oppressive, that the people who are oppressed would have to respond in a way that the oppressor sees that as not threatening.
Not threatening.
And saying everybody can be equal is threatening to an oppressor, because their quality world picture, the way they view the world, is they are on top. They don't want equal. They're not open to equal. And I'm not saying it can't ever change in that, but this is, and somewhere in there, Doug, it said something like the long game or something
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
It is a long game, and we have to continually make the choice,
Mhm. Mhm.
because there will be, as we move forward in this manner, significant efforts to derail us, to corral us, to suppress us, kind of thing. And so you know, on this side, you know, it's a continuing not trying, but a continuing recommitting, re-showing up.
Mhm.
And my friend who's been visiting me and helping me celebrate, she and I were talking just about this exact same thing. And the fact that the oppressors feel threatened, that they're going to be treated. And we were trying to look around and say, what can we bring forth as an example that your belief may not be accurate? And we were thinking of South Africa, Union of South Africa, and the horror that the white minority inflicted upon the Black majority. But then when the Black majority came in power, at least what she and I, in terms of our memory, we don't remember there being this horrific uprising of Black people and the slaughtering of white people kind of thing there. And Wendell shaking his head no, so he may be up on
No, I agree.
world
with you.
events.
That
But
does-
it's like, that is one of those fears.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's a fear, and it's a myth or a fantasy, whatever the right term is. And that may be one way, if there can be a discussion if something can be brought forth with the oppressor who has that fear, is it real? Is your fear real? Where do you see in the world that when the minority receives equality, they turn on the oppressor? And I'm not going to say it's never been anywhere in all of mankind's history, but it's not the norm.
Mhm.
So, and
Yeah,
thank you, Doug. This was really great because it just plays right into the conversations we've been having too.
it really does. I was just thinking that same thing. It's like
Yeah.
everything is kind of linked together. It's just all linked together. Because I know at some point we talked about the zero sum theory, right? And how some people believe that if you gain something, they have to give up something,
Yes.
right? When that's not true, because that's coming from a place of a scarcity mentality.
Yes.
And then, you know what, the other thing I was thinking as I was listening to you all just now, is how do we enter the quality world of the oppressor? I almost said the other. Remember, we had a conversation about others and othering, right? How do we have these opportunities for entering the quality world of those who might be oppressors or who are oppressors? Because the only way for someone to want to, and Nev is being awfully quiet too. So and so is Marty, I'm sorry. I'm gonna call you names because I do, and Lanita's being quiet too. I guess everybody's just listening to us today, Judith. But this is really good, Doug. And so it's really thank you for bringing this to us. But how do we do that? Because oftentimes people don't care about something or become involved with something unless it somehow impacts them. So how do we do that? And then, okay, so I thought about cognitive distortions, because there are a lot of cognitive distortions that kind of keep people tied into that. And then this whole idea of empathy.
Well, you also have the whole indoctrination thing.
Mhm.
You got people who've grown up believing certain things, have been taught to believe certain things,
Yes.
and it's hard to let go of that, especially if you don't expose yourself to something different, but stay within that framework and everything that you believe, that you've been taught to believe all your life, to break away from that. That's kind of hard. So it is interesting to see, how do I become seen as an a person being oppressed? How can I enter that person's quality world so that they see me as being a quality, valuable, human being that is worth, that has some worth in whatever. So I think that when you're looking at the person who is the oppressor, is kind of like they have sort of like dehumanized or somehow the other made them less than who I am in order for me to feel good about what I'm doing, or to make it okay for me to do what I'm doing. And I think for a lot of people in that position, we're talking years and years and years of indoctrination and reinforcement of these kinds of things.
And then with the long game idea in mind, we know that over time things can change. I mean, even if in these small groups, I know, and this is not the only group that's having conversations about how we can change things in this world, but these small groups of us who are having these conversations, we're going to have an impact. It might take a few more decades, right? We probably all be gone, but huh?
I said, yeah, I really believe that.
I do too.
I'm involved in a small group at my church that's doing the same thing.
Yep. So I think Shovana was waving at us. She had something she wanted to say. Did you, Shovana, or was I mistaken?
Yes, ma'am. I did have a question, well, a comment rather, to Mr. Martin when he was speaking about how does how does the oppressed group gain some sense of worth toward the oppressors? I think sometimes it starts financially, like people's worth is based on their value. So if a group of people is not in a specific financial bracket, then they're deemed as less worthy. And most minority groups are marginalized financially, so they don't seem worthy to other people. And then some of the systems that are in place that you would expect to change over the course of years is not really changed, it's just redesigned. So they just look differently, but it's still the same infrastructure as it was in the 60s versus today. That was all I wanted to say.
Can I thank you, Shavonna? Thank you so much. I want to I hear the word system all the time. And so we behave as if systems, and they are basically inanimate objects, like books, laws, things like that. But systems are supported and maintained by people.
Right.
So if we could move that concept, that word of system out of this realm of it's intangible, or it's some lofty or something like that, untouchable or whatever, into a place where we know it's the people who make the laws, the people who run the organizations, the people who are heads of whatever, and the people with the ideas about, oh, I'm not going to accept this because I don't see women in power, I'm not going to vote, whatever. If we could just make it not an object, but people, I think that we could make some significant change. Because as long as we think about it as just this bottle of water, as opposed to there are people that are maintaining these ideas, right? There are people who won't overturn these laws. There are people who are doing whatever. Then we can work with people. We can work with systems too, but the systems are going to change if the people who have the ability to change the systems don't do it.
See, that's what I think about. I think about the system is the people. I mean, when you think about you think about who runs the system, who's making these decisions, even though there may be laws or whatever, but man is enacting those laws. There are individual people. So when I think about the system, I have a hard time not thinking about people. Yeah.
Let me tell you, some people don't. They think the system, it's not, it is all the people. And so those people should be held accountable.
Like when Glasser talks about the system and management, so he's saying it's the system, and he's talking about, whoever making those decisions, that keeps that's the system. And so it's changing. This is why when he started looking at the quality school in terms of a management concept, and he's saying we got to start by educating the superintendents, educating the principals, and then we'll get down to the teachers and eventually to the students. And so his idea has always been to change the system by starting with those people who is in charge of perpetuating the system.
I have a friend who did consulting work, and doesn't even matter what the topic was, but he had been brought in because he had a record of major contributions, okay? But a lot of systems with people at the top say, I want my people to get this training, but they're not part of it. So I'm going to make this up, but it represents. So the CEO says, well, Dr. So-and-so, how much would you, Dr. Ashley, how much would you charge us to come in and do this training? And they said, the person said, will you be a part of the group? Well, I'm busy. I've got a lot of stuff to do. Does that make a difference? He said, if you're there, it's $1,000. If you're not, it's $5,000. How can I come in and try to nudge them into considering this stuff if they don't see the leadership there?
That's true.
A quick thought. Isn't it interesting? We're tying together the indoctrination thing from Marty, the zero sum thing that mentioned here, all of this. Isn't it interesting? The growth of gated communities.
Mm,
You see, I'm afraid other people, what have you. So I'm going to get into a gated community where we got security. I'm going to have a driver. I'm going to have my private plane. So I don't even have to be near other people too.
Redlining.
If they would just realize that psychologically, socially, it would be a better community to live in if all people have like the basic things that are
Mhm.
covered.
mhm,
You know, I mean, get into healthcare, living wage, that sort of thing. And
mhm,
then people are not desperate
mhm,
to try to meet those needs, sometimes in ways that do intrude. And
mhm,
so it's the French Revolution.
mhm,
Uh,
Mhm.
Eventually, the bourgeois kept doing this, and the other people said, it's time. I mean, they literally beheaded people. And so then you do have a lot to worry about if you've not treated other people with respect. And you're afraid that they'll do the same. And yet, Judith said it earlier, we don't have the examples of that in history. One quick
You
thing.
just gave one, Wendell.
You did, the French Revolution. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Several times I've made this punch. I don't know how or where. I'm thinking about it this moment. In the Air Force from 1972 to 83, I did 500 race relations seminars as the instructor. 2-day seminars. You can't have a 2-hour seminar and somebody goes to a diversity seminar on Thursday afternoon for 2 hours. But 2 days, people got into and they were all ranks from lieutenant colonel down to no stripers and one stripers. People got to talk about all these things in depth. And I like your setup at the beginning, Gloria. No violence, no judgment, open mind, yada, yada. And that's where those seminars went. And people started hearing other people and started asking questions and learned and left there with a greater respect for other people. And the number of racially negative kind of incidents went significantly down, but they had control over people's lives. They made them mandatory. Now, nowhere else do we seem to have people that are doing it, making this kind of thing mandatory. So if you offer a few seminars in the community, we pick up some nice folks like yourselves. But I'm trying to figure out, people could do it if they wanted to, especially the people in charge. They've got the money. You want to work here? Then we want to develop this constructive resilience mindset, social justice mindset. We're not giving to everybody, but that's why I like, in addition to the call it equal opportunity. Everybody doesn't get to everything, but they have the opportunity to strive for it, too. All right, I'm done.
Well, I was gonna say, that's if you look at the Corning project, the Glasser started, that was the whole purpose of that, was to change the system. And so when him and Colleen had been invited to come there, they said, we want to become, with some of the people that read his book and said, we want to become a choice community, like you write about. And he said he would do that, but he would expect everyone
From the top
to read his books, yes, and to go through the training. And once they had read, so many people had read, starting with police chief, the whole bit, once they had read, then he would send instructors to do the teaching. And I happened to go and did one of the trainings there. But what was interesting is that the whole prison system, starting with the warden and all of those people going through the training, and they set up a whole completely different approach to dealing with people who were incarcerated, right down to teaching them choice theory. So I think that there's a few places where that's going on. I have worked with at least 2 treatment centers that all of their counselors are mandatory to do training. And of course, our training certainly eliminates the you're the bad person, I'm the good person, I'm going to make your life better kind of thing. And so where people are recognized and valued and taught about that, so that they see the difference in the way they're treated and what they're learning, and they can call their counselors and to task about, gee, that's a little different than what we learned when we went through the training. And that makes a big difference. And it does change the system. And if you want to work in these institutions, then you have to do the training. It's no other choice.
And you know, doing the training is one thing. And so we cannot mandate kindness, right? You can't
No.
mandate kindness. But, and what I'm saying is the training is like planting the seeds. I like the idea of doing the training. But the other piece still for me is, because part of the problem is, you know, governments can mandate things, and they tried to mandate unity, and that doesn't work. Well, so how do we, I just think that somehow this thing has to be, like, Doug, I was going to ask you if you would put up your second slide or something, because there was like some moral, something has to happen simultaneously.
Oh, yeah.
We can't just like, it can't just be mandated. It has to come from within too. And then there has to be excuse me, I'm using that language I keep trying not to use, like has to and should and all those words that we're not supposed to use. But how do we get people excited about it so that they then will do it because that's what they want to do, right?
Well, I think that happens in your, like you say, in the small groups.
Okay.
So let's say you take people who are working in treatments, let's say one of the people working in one of these treatment centers or wherever, where they've done the training, and believe it or not, there's an awareness that goes on that this is a lot better. I know that when I went through the training as a counselor, I mean, what they taught me in college was nothing compared to what I learned when I did glasses training. You know, all of a sudden I realized that I'm not responsible for other people's behavior, and I can't make people better, but I can help people evaluate and make themselves better if I can give them what they need to do that. And boy, that was great. And what a great relief that I don't have to be responsible for making somebody else better. And when they don't get better, then it's my fault. You know? So I think that there's an awareness that people come to, that my life is better, you know, acting and treating people this way, and I don't have to deal with all the crap that comes along. And I think that working in smaller groups, you're not going to convince the government of that unless you're going to sit down with each individual person in something like that. But I think that it can spread from this point of view.
Okay.
And I think it's the small groups that's going to make that difference. And like agencies where you have people who are coming in and learning these kinds of things, and people who are interested in exposing their employees to this as well as themselves, I think will make a big difference. Because they'll leave there and go out and interact with other people.
There's a power in small.
Yeah.
So when you look at the Mothers Against Drunk Driving,
That's right.
that was one mother
Yeah.
who said, I'm going to see what I can do.
Yeah.
And that is a nationwide, maybe beyond the US.
Yeah.
And we look at some things and we think, oh, you know, we need all these people to get in. We've just had elections. And some candidates won because they had more boots on the ground. I can't remember who it was, that they had almost 1,000 people volunteer on their campaign to go door to door for wherever they were and whatever they were running for. And that's how they won. That and showing up and talking to people, listening to what they had to say,
Mhm.
and then talking to them, showing that they had heard what the person was saying. We often listen in order to hear something that we can rebut.
That's right, that's right.
And so if, I mean, just in terms of the 12 of us, if we each go forth with these ideas in mind and we're talking to people and we show up in our actions and our words, you know, that's 12 more people.
That's right, that's right.
And, you know, if, you know, and Marty's working in his church, and I mean, all of us have spheres of influence. And who knows, you know, this time next month, instead of 12, it could be 24 or even 36 or however you multiply that out.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think we don't do ourselves any favor when I mean, maybe our end goal is out here, but I think the power of the starting small. The only person's behavior I can control is my own. This is my sphere of influence. How can I step into these concepts fully by my actions and my words, and realizing that's all we can do. But if enough of us are doing it, it's like the 100th monkey. At some point, things change. Just look at television and the advertising. If you go back 10 years ago, virtually all of the commercials were populated by white people, and not just by color. I mean, and they were slim and beautiful and dressed to the nines and all of those kinds of things. Where are those people now? They're on the commercials for the fancy resorts. But they're not selling cars or toothpaste and that's a huge, see, I think that's part of it, because the oppressors are seeing people that aren't like them just doing everyday ordinary things. So it starts to normalize.
Yeah.
Is it enough by itself? No.
No.
But I think it provides another layer, and staying hopeful that we will prevail.
I'm going to read this last sentence in Doug's thing, and it's 3 o'clock, y'all. You know, I try to really be respectful of everybody's time. It says, individual and societal development are thus inseparably linked, each one acting upon the other. The twofold moral purpose derives from this reciprocal relationship. So I think overall, I mean, everything we talk about lately is this idea of how much we need each other, and how much, you know, how we've got to these little naggy things are here, but that if we get to a place where we really understand we need each other, then we can maybe change a whole lot of stuff for all of us. Thank you, Doug. Again, anybody else have any comments? What a wonderful conversation, y'all. Thank you. Right before Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Doug.
You're welcome. I'm sorry I was so rambling. I sort of like
You
all
did a
the
great
ideas I had in
job.
my head kind of just froze when I started presenting.
That's okay. You did a great job. You gave us a wonderful conversation. We probably went sideways a little bit from what you were trying to get us to do, but it was that always happens in this group. We always go sideways, but it always ends up being a wonderful.
Right. That's the key. That's the
So
key.
you accomplished your purpose to create reflection and thought.
That
You
was
sure got
it. That was it. Thank you. Thank you.
Reflection and
Would
thought.
Shavana and Lanita send me your email address? Mine is is in the chat room. I got other
So,
people.
so Lanita, did you want to add something? You turned on
No,
your camera, so
no.
that means you want to add something.
No, I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much, Doug. I'm so thankful that all you guys at the table. I really especially enjoyed some of the comments from the FBI.
In the world of tennis, I was at a Goodwill store the other day. In the world of tennis, is people take practice shots for other things, but they don't take any practice serves. And so what they do, Lenita, they get up there and they say FBI, and it's first ball in. So they may have 6 or 7 serves that don't go in, and you play the first one. So I thought of that when I saw this. First ball in.
First of all,
Ball in.
thank you. More
Thank you.
education. This is always such an educational group. Thank you.
Yeah. Neb,
Neb, you are pretty quiet today. Neb said,
Neb is quiet. Are you on the road?
No,
I'm not on the road, but I enjoyed the conversation and really, really well done. There was no need to speak when you could just listen.
Yeah.
"There's truth in that."
thank you, Neb.
Hey, we just enjoy having you. I enjoy all of you. Thank you all so, so much. Quandra, did you have anything to say, Jody, before we go?
Before the
No,
Supreme Court.
great
right now,
conversation today.
affirmative actions.
Great conversation.
Thank you all very much. And y'all have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks again, Doug.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank you.
again,
You're
Doug.
Thank
Doug,
you
Happy
so much.
Thanksgiving.
So did you get my email address?
See, you put it in the chat.
Yeah,
What
let me-
got it?
let me put mine in chat.
All right. Thank you, Doug. What a great job.
Good
Oh
job.
my God.